Good. Are we in the green room, Tiff?
It's 2 seconds. You are live.
We are live. All right. Listen, everybody, welcome to the green room today. A little bit different today. Ruta's not in, but it was such an important week that we couldn't not have a green room. So I really went out and I searched for who was the OGest of the OG advisors to me, a mentor, and I mean it. And we'll talk about it as I came into the cannabis space in Florida. What I like to call the 50-yard line. Karen Sieb Goldstein has been there from the kickoff of the entire battle going all the way back. But before I get you in, Karen, I got to express condolences to Senate President Kathleen Pasadomo's family. She had a horrible tragedy. Her husband fell hiking out in Utah and passed away, and it was horrible. And, as I said in my Twitter response to Peter Sorch, as an emergency physician, it just reminds me every day, 35 years in the biz, I saw it every day. Life is precious, the traumas, of course, of life and otherwise, we're all day to day. But I wanted to start out that way and express condolences to Senator, the president, of course, Pasadomo and her family. Just a horrible tragedy. And, once again, reminds us. And, Karen, just as I bring you in, as once again, that OG mentor to me. We were talking yesterday a little bit, prepping, and I want to, I'm wearing my Bobby Tuna t-shirt today. I am, as I went in and I grabbed things, and Karen was a great friend to Robert Platshorn, Bobby Tuna, who passed. It's been over a year now, right, Karen?
Has it been that long? Oh yeah, just about.
I think it has been, and anniversaries come and go.
Yeah.
But I know you told me very poignantly that you were one of the last ones to be with him and, and hold his hand. But such a great, once again, OGer in the biz. And here we are, the Supreme Court. And so say anything you want, don't let me overstep you. But here we are, the Supreme Court has made their verdict. As we said on our backdrop here, the verdict is in. And, Karen, take us back historically, because I know you go all the way back to Amendment 2. And, just even the timeline, because we have a lot of viewers, of the green room who, really don't have the backstory of what the struggle has been here in Florida.
The struggle in Florida in particular,
everywhere.
We've had this contrary legislature since the beginning, since we tried to make any kind of progress, which is why the citizens initiative process has been so valuable to us. Otherwise, we wouldn't have been able to do anything. As far as my personal involvement, I started smoking weed in 1964. So, I've been around the block a few times with it. And, truthfully, my goal has always just been the re-legalization of this plant. I never wanted to get into business. I never wanted to have my own grow or, it was never my plan. I'm going to be 77 in a few weeks, and I don't anticipate, any kind of entrepreneurial effort, even when we do have adult use, legal adult use. And we started our normal chapter in about 2009, I think. I'm fuzzing 2009 or 10. And what happened was I met Kim Russell, who started, it was before United for Care. It was People United for Medical Marijuana, the acronym PUFM. And she had,
I love that.
And she had the first written, first viable written petition. She had some support. She had volunteers. She had people going out and collecting signatures. And although we didn't get there, it did catch the attention of John Morgan in particular and others with money and influence who wanted to help.
Right. But also with just John Morgan coming into that. And we haven't heard his name in a long time, Karen, but like many who started way back when, he comes from a personal story of I believe his brother, right? It was, who was paralyzed, in a diving accident in a pool and had horrible spasmodic pain and other things that was helped by cannabis. Right.
And
so,
his intent was to help to legalize the plant for medical use, so his brother would not be a criminal, and the rest of us in need of this medication would also not be, criminals. And so with his financial help, we were able to get enough signatures to get on the ballot. And it took 2 go rounds, but the
Two
second
go rounds. Got to
Second-
remind everybody about that, of course, right?
the second time around, 71.4%, I believe, of Floridians voted in favor of medical marijuana in Florida.
Right.
And
Because I
again,
remind everybody, we have our 60% bar in Florida.
right,
Ohio being the last state to undertake this in last November's election, and they only got 58%, you know, and that's not a state that's too particularly different demographically, you know, than Florida. So, you know, that 60% bar can be tough. And I know what the first go round, Karen, it was what, 58%?
also 50, exactly, 58 point something, 0.6 or something. It was very,
Right.
yeah, it was really.
But times have changed. Times have changed.
They
And one
have.
of the great things about, you know, our practice is that, you know, we opened up in January of 17. So we're in literally our 8th year now. And I tell everybody it's so different now than it was 7 years ago, just like it's going to be so different 7 years from now than it is now. Right. So we're in that zone. And you dated a little bit better to the extent of even being a 15-year struggle, so to speak, with a lot of stops and starts here in Florida.
Right. And
Right.
of course, after the medical program came into being, there were a lot of hiccups along the way. I'm sure a lot of people remember that initially, I mean, who thought that the legislature was going to say, sure, okay, you can do this, but you can't smoke it? Who thought, you know, out of nowhere that this was going to, you know, of course, we evolved past that.
Well, the original Ray Rod bill was oral and suppositories. I think, as I remember, there was not even any vaping. You know,
Yeah, it was
completely
tough.
misunderstood. So I got to give the legislature credit to a certain extent. You know, I'll tell you, we were talking yesterday. Tiffany's behind the computer there running things, and we were talking about it. And this is what you're talking about, Karen. This is about, I call it about our 6th phase, okay, in medical to a certain extent. We came out with this, then we got flower, then we got edibles, then there was a telehealth phase, telehealth 1, COVID, telehealth 2, now permanent, you know, the RFEs, the dose cap limits that I went to Tallahassee and stood up in the news conference next to Nikki Fried about. So our clinic, you know, we've seen this before. I'm calling this, and this is why I really wanted to have you on, Karen, because I call this phase the new phase of now pre-legal adult use. There's going to be a campaign. We're going to hear a bunch of BS. They're going to talk about deaths from cannabis, okay, in their PR.
Sure.
The way they are.
Yes.
And we're going to have to be very nimble as a community, and they've broken our community in a lot of ways over a lot of various issues, you know, and we just went through the whole. And listen, I could have you on for 4 shows to talk about the hemp bill and our friends, you know, in what I call the cannabinoid purveyor space, you know, some good, some bad, you know, but the point is, this is a phase now that's critical because we have to understand what we've seen in other states. And if you don't protect your medical, pay attention, keep the pressure where it needs to be placed, right, then things happen. But the reason I wanted to bring you in specifically is that you see some of the things, and I try to avoid Facebook, believe me, and X or Twitter, whatever it may be, and Instagram and all of it, because of the misinformation and what I like to call kind of misplaced emotion, so to speak, over really what we're seeing as we go forward with what's now being offered up by the state of Florida in the constitutional amendment, which calls for legal adult use and possession of 3 ounces of cannabis, right, and 5 ounces of a concentrated cannabis product. Can't get into, and this is, and I'm going to shut up because you can comment on it.
5 grams, I think, of concentrate. No.
I'm sorry, 5 grams of concentrate. I misspoke. Yeah. But the point is that it can't include, because of how Florida's single subject is, can't include home grow. It mentions hopefully that others will be allowed to engage in the process. So we could talk about, the motivations behind it, from the MSOs and things of that nature. But the point is, what we both want is that decriminalization aspect of it. And that's what we all get out of this, be it good, be it bad, be it too much of a monopoly. So hopefully everybody agrees on that, but you would agree that the misinformation that you see and the misplaced, as I say, emotion is rampant throughout
Well,
social media.
I have to say that I think that a lot of it comes out of a space of self-interest. They're either people who have businesses where they're selling alternative products to what we can get in the dispensaries or what should be able to get as, with adult use. They're selling, a lot of the Delta 8s or the things like that. And so they know that legalization will affect their bottom line. I think also that the people who are opposing it, especially the ones who keep yelling for home grow because they don't understand the concept, as you said, of the single subject for the constitutional amendment, are probably really protesting from a position, it's my own opinion, that either they are illegally selling or growing and know that, broad legalization will again affect their bottom line, or they're bringing it from, California or some other state and making a living that way. And it's unfortunate that their own special interests would outweigh the interests of all of us, all Floridians. And I really and honestly believe that there are a couple of people who keep beating the same drum. And I think that those people, you can tell them over and over again that the language of this amendment clearly says medical marijuana treatment centers and other licensed entities. Those are the words in this amendment. What the legislature does with it, we have no control over. Well, we can, by lobbying, but essentially.
And voting, one would surmise, but
Well, no, but I'm
you know,
talking about the language of
I
this
got you,
in
of
particular.
course, sure.
So, these people who say, well, it's a monopoly. First of all, it's not a monopoly. We have 22, 24 licensed MMTCs right now. I think the concept of monopoly is escaping these people. Monopoly is one. We have multiples of one. And
I mean, it's a heavily regulated, vertically created system. It just is. It's Florida, and it is what it is. But no, Karen, I think the good news is for patients, they tell me plenty of availability, prices are great, no
Right.
taxes, okay.
Right.
And it's interesting because one of the reasons I really wanted to have you on was that I really think, and listen, you have the normal shirt on, so no, and I mean it. There's a sense of legitimacy that comes with the sandbox that you've played in. And first off, you look great at 77.
Thank you.
No, listen, you do. As I was driving to work this morning, Martin Luther King was assassinated 56 years ago today. And that kind of dates me. I had my 50-year high school reunion personally coming up, this summer. So I'm going to be 68. So these are formative years, and one of the joys of our lifetime has been seeing cannabis, pot, dope, weed, grass, drug of abuse go now to substance of great use.
Right. Sure.
And that's an evolution of many things, of politics, of healthcare. We can go into the sandbox of sports, but when it comes to cannabis, there's just a great joy right now in being able to offer it as medicine, as medicinal, because of what we know now that we didn't know back in '69.
Sure.
I talked often of my 30-second elevator speech, which basically entails thinking about the image of the guy on the front of the zigzag papers as what most people think of as pot, dope, weed, grass, that getting high experience. And not, listen, to say drug of abuse would be insulting those of us who've used it since those early days, high school, college, and here we are,
Right.
And that's the experience of most of us. That doesn't mean that some people don't succumb, and we can talk about Senator Osgood, from the Democratic side, who unfortunately brought that gateway theoryism into the Senate chambers this year in her testimony. And I say this every time I talk about her, I'm glad she recovered. I'm glad she's a 12-stepper and is about abstinence and this and that. And I recognize the hazards of cannabis too. It's a point I've made often over the past couple of days to people that this is a unique time, Karen, and I can't wait to hear you speak to it, because the publicity is going to ramp up right now, right, about cannabis. It's going to be one of those unique times, okay, that we can almost hopefully legitimately engage in the appropriate conversation, right, about cannabis policy. Right. Both in the legal adult use world, which of course has been Normal's focus forever, and as we go forward, also in the medicinal world, to make sure that we don't lose what we have, that momentum towards creating more and better products, more research, better labeling, right?
Okay. Did you know that in the original medical marijuana constitutional provisions, there was a sunset provision?
6 months after. Yep, I sure do. Go ahead.
So,
please tell everybody else.
So originally, I'm looking for the wording. Okay, so originally the provision, what it said that 6 months after an adult use constitutional amendment passes, such as the one that, and this says maybe on the November ballot, is adopted, that the medical program would sunset.
Yep.
But when they passed the bill for the black farmers to be licensed, Representative Ralph Masulo, who was the bill sponsor, put in this provision that would remove that. So that's no longer a threat to the medical program.
And that's huge. No, listen, a huge shout out to Representative Mazzullo, and we've shouted him out in the green room before.
Right.
He's unfortunately termed out. Well, no, listen, it'll be interesting to see who picks up the ball next.
Right. But that's important. That's a very important thing, because we could have, if without that, we could have lost the medical program. But the goal of the MMTCs, who are now, I don't know if you saw the news yesterday, I posted it in the Normal group, Curaleaf, Air, which I believe is, we have Liberty, I think.
Yeah. Sure. They've made a small consortium. Go ahead. Yep.
Right. There are, and I forgot who else. There's a couple of other groups, a couple of other MMTCs that who have joined in this, as you said, coalition to help because people are going to say, well, what do you need money for now? You're already on the ballot. Well, because of what you said.
Are you kidding me? No, listen, it's going to be, listen, what you have to know. So let's cut through the misinformation, everybody. And once again, thanks, Karen, for being here. And you'll moderate me, please, and speak up when you hear things that you don't agree with. It's a supermajority Republican legislative body up in Florida and Tallahassee, and a governor, that doesn't want this to happen. Mm-hmm. They've already spoken to the fact that they're going to vigorously campaign against it. And listen, there's a million more, I think, is what Eric Sarkisian, friend of the show, told me last time I talked to him. Not the 874,000 more registered Republicans in the state, but he told me it was actually up to 1 million. So, we'll see if it passes or not. But my point is, what you have to understand is that there's going to be a heavy campaign against it. So we're going to have to make sure that we're there to give the appropriate educational message. Right. And here's a very important educational message, everybody. And it's a part of that 30-second elevator speech that I was talking about with Karen, getting away from it. but I want to get back to it because so there's the beauty of the joy of the cannabinoids, understanding of CBD and the creation of the duality products and the patches and the creams and the inhaled products, smokable whole flower, of course, always, okay, suppositories for the politicians I don't like. But what we have to understand is that in the world of today, there's also cannabis products that do end up people in the ER environment, right? I've had this talk often over the past couple of days with people, including a couple reporters who have called me about the stories. I now know why in my 35-year career in the emergency medicine biz, I never saw a cannabis-related problem in the ER. And it's true, because no 5-year-old is ever going to smoke a joint. It's just not going to happen. If they find a joint, they may try to eat it or something, but it's not going to be decarboxylated, or your dog too, by the way.
Right.
But they'll find their parents' gummies, as will your animal. And that could end up a kid in the ER. And listen, Karen, this is really important. And I want everybody to kind of focus on this word as we go forward with the discussion. With an overexposure to cannabinoids.
Right.
Overdose kills people. Overexposure is an uncomfortable day or night, overnight in the ER. God forbid, never in the ICU with a tube. But, listen, it happens now. Senator Simon from Tallahassee, and this is the second side of that. No new user of a cannabinoid, okay, in my day, ate a whole pan full of brownies as their first exposure to cannabis. They would smoke a joint with their friends, eat one brownie, and if you didn't like it, then you didn't do it again, but you didn't end up in the ER. Now you can walk into the venue that could be MMTC without good doctor education and training, and a person behind the window that doesn't ask if you ever used cannabis before. No one wants a newbie walking out of the MMTC environment or the hemp store, right? God forbid the smoke shop, okay? And even worse, the gas station, okay? With a Delta 8 product, hemp-derived Delta 9 product, MMTC, Delta 9 product, RSO, 50 milligram capsule, okay? That will result in an say it, everybody, I'm kidding. Overexposure, okay, to cannabinoids. Once again, not overdose. Senator Simon ended up in the ER, okay, after he took his however much of what he took, and who knows what he took.
Right, who knows?
And those aren't good stories in Tallahassee. So that's the understanding that we need to bring to the table as we go into this legal adult use debate. We
Yes.
recognize,
We do,
right?
we do need to organize talking points. We do need to get on the same page. But before we even do that, I believe that one of the reasons you and I are speaking today is to straighten out some of this misinformation. And I mean, the things that I see, because I do go on social media, I very rarely read anything, but I do post, and sometimes I'll go back to not filter the comments necessarily, but people you'll post something about marijuana, cannabis, whatever, and somebody will try to sell a t-shirt, so I'll go back and look at what's there, just so I can delete the irrelevant stuff. So, but I see the misinformation. Yesterday I just glanced and I saw somebody talking about, well, they're going to tax us $20 an ounce. Well, you don't know that. Just because they do that in Arizona or they do that in some other state doesn't mean they're going to do that here. And it could be more, it could be less. The people who are
I
claiming
think the original Carlos Guillermo Smith of 3 years ago, Bill, up in Tallahassee, I think had a $50 an ounce surcharge or something at that point, Karen. And I'll be honest with you, the $20 an ounce tax wouldn't be the worst,
yeah,
quite frankly, if you look at it, it wouldn't be a
no.
horrible number. But we heard no mention of the number in Tallahassee, which I thought was really interesting.
Right.
They really didn't go there. They
Well,
did
the,
go potency cap,
the constitutional amendment, the language, and that the only thing we know right now is in the language of that constitutional amendment. We can surmise we can make stuff up, we can pretend to know, we can offer our services even for a fee to help people get that license for when it goes, adult use. Um, doesn't mean it's going to happen. That's what happened with medical. There were companies, for a fee, they would insure, they would put you on and get you on a list so that when we start licensing MMTCs, you'll be number 1 or 2.
Yeah,
And none
sure.
of that
Yeah.
happened because the legislature did what they want. I don't know if you remember this, but initially, when they were starting to uh, the licensing procedure, somewhere out of the blue, they came up with a lottery for licenses, which immediately got shot
No,
down.
I actually
Then
don't
they had
remember
to go
that.
back, had to go to a ranking system, and nobody
Yeah,
knows what the parameters were for the ranking system.
right. Sure.
So,
Well,
they
still
still,
going on, I mean,
of
there are
course, of course.
72 applicants for the, I think it is, or whatever, for the, who knows how many more we're gonna get? I mean,
Right,
listen.
but my point is that this is all we know. The
Sure,
words in this constitutional amendment are all we know.
sure.
People can tell all the lies they want about monopolies and about ridiculous, as I said, ridiculous taxes and, but we don't know. We
Sure.
don't
Yeah,
know.
I agree with that, Karen, and that's why I wanted to have you in because we don't know. And what I was kind of leading to is what we do know is that there's a very conservative legislative body and a governor that aren't ready for it. So you can
Right.
surely surmise that there will be a tax, there will be restrictions on, I wonder how they're going to track purchase amounts. So if you go to Colorado, California, any of the legal adult use states, you still have to show your driver's license,
Sure.
when you go in. So is that all they're going to demand in Florida for
Well,
legal? How are they going to track the 3 ounce,
it doesn't
possession
say
amount?
nope, it doesn't say
Right.
anything about any kind of tracking or
No,
anything like that.
right.
What it says about the 3 ounce, it says an individual's possession of marijuana for personal use shall not exceed 3 ounces. That means they have to actually come into your house or check your person. I don't think it has anything to do with what you purchase. I don't think they're going to be tracked. Well, I don't know.
Well,
We don't know. There's
or they
no,
devise,
there's
right,
nothing in the amendment
right.
that
Or they, yeah,
refers to tracking purchases.
sure.
So as far as we know, that just means if a cop stops you and you have 3.5 ounces, you're in trouble.
Sure. Yeah, no, I agree. And we don't even know what agency necessarily. They may set up a new agency
Right.
to monitor the entire program. I've
true.
called that thanks to 5 minutes,
Okay.
Karen. That's how fast the green room goes. No, I've called this red card, green card system forever. That they would want the recreational consumer, right? The legal adult use consumer,
Right.
better stated, to also have a card that they can scan, that they can actually, listen to medical. Everybody knows we're, at 2.5 ounces every 35 days. So
Right.
that's easily tracked through the OMU's system. Should the state decide they want to set up either through the OMU or through some other system, whatever. So, who knows what they're going to do. This is why I tell everybody this, and it is my message. And Karen, I'd be very interested in your response to the message. I plan on leaning in to people getting their medical cards, okay, as we go through this very highly, every pun intended, highly publicized period of time, okay, for cannabis.
Mhm.
There's gonna be a lot of talk, a lot of rallies. I've already done a couple newspaper articles. I guarantee I'll do more. I hope CNBC, MSNBC, CNN, more likely Sarasota 7, who I've been on many times. Shout out to Alan Cohn, one of my favorite anchors, another friend of the green room. I want to deliver this message so Karen, here's a great question for you. And I can't wait to get your answer. How many cannabis consumers do you think there are in the state of Florida that don't have a medical card?
Oh,
hang on, I have my number and I'd be intrigued to hear yours. I'm gonna let you give me yours first.
I would guess, well, let's see, we have what, about almost
850 to
900,000
900,000, 850
Okay,
in the
somewhere in
program.
there. Okay. I would say at least triple that number would be
Okay, so you'd say
our,
the 2 million to 3 million number?
at least. Yeah, probably
Sure.
closer to 3 million. Yeah.
I go 5 million, believe it or not, to the extent that you're not talking to Willie Nelson types. You're
Right.
talking about, your once in a whilers, if somebody else has it. But my point is, we know that there's still a very active, vigorous legacy market, obviously. We also know, and it's not yet sent to the governor's desk yet, from what I understand, but we know that the hemp bill, if the governor signs it, is going to take that market away, right? That cannabinoid side, Delta 8, who knows what's going to happen. Like I said, that's another show. But those products will be illegal, including the smoke shop pre-rolls that are THCA, hemp derived. So my point is that if you're a cannabis consumer in Florida and you plan on voting for the legal adult use amendment, constitutional amendment 3, by the way, and they will. And here's my prediction also, Karen. I think most of the advocates that whine and complain and ask these questions that we know how to answer, but not everybody does necessarily, and want things that can't necessarily be derived out of this constitutional amendment. Let's talk others. Social injustice and inequities, expungements, okay, protection in the workplace. My use when I go into the assisted living home, they better have an ashtray and a bench out there for me, okay, so I can use my cannabis product. Much less, right, smoke my joint, much less, okay, wear a patch or take an edible inside the assisted living home. Those things got to be codified, of course.
Right.
So we understand people not getting that, but I still say those advocates are going to hold their nose and vote for it. The vast majority of them, because we're in Florida. It's slow. I do too, because we're in Florida. It's slow interval type of progression. But here's my point, and I know, Tiff, we're coming up top of the hour. If you're a kid, and this is my message, and I'm going to continue to preach it, because I think it's best to have talking points. And here's mine. If you're a cannabis consumer in the state of Florida and you plan on voting for the constitutional amendment and you haven't gotten your card yet, find a good provider who's going to give you a good medical doctor office visit with an excellent staff like mine and get your card. And here's why. If you look at how the money's going to flow, you know that the legislature in general is going to want people coming in through the legal adult use side, because that's going to be the taxed side of the dispensary. Hopefully, we're going to fight for it. We can keep our medical side untaxed. Also, you can surmise that there's going to be potency differences on the legal adult use side versus the medical side.
You can't surmise that.
Well, you know what, Karen, I just say that because Colorado has that.
That's okay. You still can't surmise it.
Okay,
I'll tell you why. That becomes something that the people who are opposed, I mean, even our supporters who are opposed to this, that's one of the rumors they'll start spreading.
That's true. I'll accept that. I got it. I'll ratchet it all back. My advice would be to get the card just to make sure that you have a certain insurance policy.
Sure.
And you have a certain, let's put it that way. You have a certain insurance policy. And also, I think what it does, Karen, it points out that we need to keep a vibrant medical program active in Florida. Can you imagine if the medical program actually grew from 850,000 to 1.5 million?
Well,
during the campaign phase? That would be interesting, wouldn't it?
I could see that happening, because people who might not have wanted to put their toe in the water, spend the money for a doctor and a card and all that, might try it with an adult use program and then decide, you know what, this really helps me. I think I need some medical guidance. And they could would go get their card.
Well, that's what I worry about, is people going into the legal adult use side with medical desires and needs, right? And not really being able to achieve what they want on that legal adult use side. But listen, hopefully. That's why I had you in, so that you could help me refine these talking points, because I surely don't want to give any ammo, so to speak, to those that would speak against it. But I do believe that the more people that we have in medical as we go into legal adult use guarantees that that there's going to be motivation, so to speak, to make sure that medical products continue to be created. In my view, the MMTCs, they're going to do well on both sides, to that extent,
Sure,
but the state's
100%.
only right. But the state,
Right.
is going to have their motivation. But listen, I so appreciate you being here, and I mean it. Go ahead, please
I have a
wrap up.
last
Say what
word.
you want.
I have
Every
a-
bit.
My last word is vote. That's my last word. You
Listen,
need to check your voter registration. Make sure your address is correct. Make sure you're registered to vote. And if you vote by absentee ballot, you need to request a new one for this election. I don't care if you had one last time. You need to go online with your supervisor of elections and request a new mail-in ballot.
yeah,
The
new
most-
mail-in ballot, right? Doesn't necessarily be absentee, but anybody that voted by mail. Karen, thank you so much for that, and I mean it because we do. It needs to be grassroots. It's always been grassroots, and we need to make sure. And I appreciate you coming in to help me, define and refine, because we need to make sure that the grassroots has a good understanding that this is our chance right now to
Right.
really take a big step forward towards getting the
This-
criminality out of cannabis. That's what it's all about.
And if it's not perfect, there's an expression, we cannot let the perfect stand in the way of the good. And no matter what, this is the good.
Listen,
May not-
great way to
may
wrap
not be
up.
Perfect, but it's gonna be good.
Listen, that's why I brought you in. I so appreciate it. If we can do it again, for sure,
Anytime.
as the camp, awesome, because I know we'll need you. Tiff, thanks so much for doing what you do. Everybody have a great week. We'll see you next week in the green room. Thanks, Karen.